for a moment because I am getting breaking news into our newsroom here in my ear as we speak, and I am extremely sorry to be the one to tell you that we have very sad news from the world of sports. And again, this is just developing as we speak, that the legendary Gale Sayers has died. Gale Sayers, who was one of the greatest running backs of all time and a Chicago Bears legend, has died, I am told, at the age of 77. What I'm about to tell you, I will do off the top of my head. Again, this was not something that had been expected to my knowledge. We don't have almost anything prepared for you, but I did work and cover sports in Chicago for 11 years. Gale Sayers was a local icon and is considered by anyone old enough to have seen him play to have been one of the greatest running backs of all time. He played, if I'm not mistaken, 7 years for the Bears in total, but really only played 5 because he played at a time when a knee injury essentially ended your career, and that's what happened. But during that period of time that Gale Sayers was healthy, people, again, who are old enough to have seen it, will tell you he was as good a running back as there ever lived, and he is, in fact, a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, despite having played for as short a period of time as he did. I can tell you also, he was part of what is considered maybe the greatest draft of all time. In 1965, the Chicago Bears drafted Gale Sayers and Dick Butkus in the same season, and that is the stuff of legend in Chicago, though those teams never really went on to win almost anything during his tenure. And then finally, I would mention, of course, from a pop culture standpoint, his life was to some degree immortalized because of the relationship he had with another Bears player named Brian Piccolo, who died very young at the age of cancer, very young of cancer. And those two were very close friends, and the film Brian's Song is based on that relationship between those two men, and that is, candidly, it's a movie that makes you cry every single time you see it. So Gale Sayers has died at the age of 77. Again, a Hall of Famer and one of the great players ever. We're just getting this information as we speak. I will pass along any more as we get it. I don't know anything about the circumstances of it.
The great Chicago Bear running back, Hall of Famer, passed away at the age of 77. He was the first running back I saw who defied logic. You know, when you watch The Matrix and you see how Keanu Reeves moves, Gale Sayers was doing that on the football field. He gave you this illusion. It was like, here it is, and then he would move it away from you. He had this unbelievable ability to cut, and he made people miss. We look at Barry Sanders, and Barry Sanders, of course, was phenomenal, and he made you miss. Gale Sayers did it in a way that had a poetry to it. It felt like it was slow motion the way he was moving and making people miss, but it was real time, and it sort of defied logic. But he was the first running back I remember, and I grew up watching the Cleveland Browns every Sunday. That was the game we always got. So I got to see Jim Brown, Leroy Kelly later on. You got to see O.J. Simpson in the late 60s. I got to see him. O.J. was another player. O.J. defied logic as well with his ability to cut and make people miss and have this burst, this acceleration. And the Bears weren't a very good team, but they had two of the greatest players of all time, and Dick Butkus, Gale Sayers. They went in the same draft. But Gale Sayers, in fact, back-to-back third and fourth picks of round one for the Chicago Bears and George Halas. But Gale Sayers, his career cut short. I remember watching that game when I think it was Kermit Alexander, the 49ers, hit him in his knee. And if it happened now, Gale would have been able to resume his career. But he was just wonderful to watch. It was just, we got cheated there a little bit. But he was just, the ability to make people miss was, it was phenomenal. That game against the 49ers, and he played on a terrible turf at Wrigley Field. And it just felt like it was a mess because it was a baseball field. But he had a game against the 49ers, and it was muddy, and he was the only one who wasn't affected by it. And that might have been when he had 6 touchdowns. He just did it in every punt return. He could throw passes. I mean, he was just an amazing, amazing player. I only met him once, and he had this quiet demeanor about him. There was nothing, he was one of those guys that his personality didn't match the way he played. Because his personality, he was kind of compartmentalized and measured, but pleasant. But he would get on a football field, and he was an assassin there. But Gale Sayers passing away at the age of 77. last hour, we found out that Gale Sayers, Hall of Fame running back for the Bears, passed away at the age of 77. There's certain athletes that have an impact on you when you're growing up. It's because, your life is not complicated. You're collecting trading cards. Like, all you care about is the lineup of your team, and you follow them, and you're listening on radio, and you're looking at the box scores. Like, you can't consume enough. And then I always got the Cleveland Browns games when I was growing up. So I'm very fortunate. I got to see some of the greatest running backs of all time. Jim Brown, Leroy Kelly, Ernie Green. And occasionally you would get that game where we got to see the Chicago Bears. And I got to see Gale Sayers. And I'm probably 10 years old, maybe 11. And boy, that had an impact on me. Because I didn't know how somebody could run that way. He made you miss. And growing up watching football prior to that, you had guys who tried to run over you. Like, you'll go back to Jim Taylor. They were running over you. Dave Osborne with the Vikings. Mark Van Egan of the Raiders. You just had that kind of powerful running back. And this was different. Gale Sayers was different than any other running back I ever saw up until that point. And then OJ, late 60s, in the Rose Bowl against Ohio State, that's when I went, oh, my God. He's sort of doing what Gale Sayers did, but he's bigger, he's faster. But Gale Sayers was a special player, and his career cut short because of a knee injury, but did go into the Hall of Fame, passing away at the age of 77. Rick in Iowa joins us. Hey, Rick, what do you have for me today?
Hi, Dan. How are you?
Good, Rick.
I am. It's unfortunate with Gale Sayers passing, but I'm very passionate about Gale Sayers, and you've mentioned a lot of things that we're the same demographic age-wise that I know about. But a couple of things that I think are notable is, in my mind, Gale Sayers is the Sandy Koufax of the NFL. Two greats that careers were cut short, that arguably considered two of the greatest ever.
Yep.
Another thing, Dan, out of Omaha, Nebraska, Gale Sayers grew up in the same neighborhood with the Gibson boys, Bob Gibson. And Omaha's not that big, but there's two of the greatest players for two different sports in the same city that grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, that I think is notable. And the last thing is, to this day, Gale Sayers still holds the state record in the long jump, 24-10 and a half, and that was a heck of a jump. As you know, Bob Beeman did it down in New Mexico, went like almost 9 feet or something like that elevated area. But Gale Sayers did that in high school.
All right. Well, thank you, Rick. Yeah. Mexico City, not New Mexico for Bob Beeman. But
was the Olympics not in Albuquerque?
No, they were not. But that's okay. I did not know that Bob Gibson and Gale Sayers grew up in Omaha at the same time. Yeah, Paul?
If you go on YouTube, it's easy to find Gale Sayers highlights, but it's fascinating to watch them playing football in Wrigley Field. There's just people standing against the ivy watching. There's like a dog and a guy walking around. It feels like it's a weird exhibition game.
And he was playing on such – and even when he got injured, it wasn't because of the turf. It was just the defensive back for the 49ers, the way he hit him. And he caught him right on his knee. And Sayers came back, I think, played one more year. But he was just never the same. And, of course, the movie Brian's Song about Brian Piccolo, the fullback or running back with Gale Sayers, and they developed this great friendship. The original Brian's Song is wonderful with James Caan, Billy D. Williams. But Gale Sayers passing away at the age of 77.
His football career was taken from us too soon, and now one of the all-time greats leaves us at the age of 77. Former Chicago Bears star Gale Sayers, considered one of the greatest running backs in the history of the NFL despite a career cut short by knee injuries, has died after living with dementia. Known as the Kansas Comet, Sayers was voted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1977 despite playing just 7 seasons, all with the Bears. And at 34, he was the youngest player ever inducted. Sarah Spain has more on the life and career of Gale Sayers.
In football, it's often said the best ability is availability. That's why they call the greats those whose greatness has stood the test of time, who have longevity to their name. So what do they call those greats who don't have longevity? You call them Gale Sayers.
Give me 18 inches of daylight. That's all I need.
Gale Sayers only played 7 seasons in the NFL. In each of his last 2, he only played 2 games. But his Canton qualities were never in question.
None of the moves that I had on the football field, I worked on. Only thing I did was to get myself in shape. But once on the football field, I just let instinct take over. It was God-given talent.
Nicknamed the Kansas Comet after his alma mater and his speed, Sayers burst onto the scene his rookie year in the NFL, tying a league record with 6 touchdowns in a single game against the 49ers.
When I woke up that morning, it was raining. And when we got to the field, it was in bad condition, and it seemed like everybody was slipping but me. And every time I touched the football, I had good footing, and it was just one of those days that happens once in a lifetime.
Now, Sayers' career was derailed by major knee injury, but his talent was undeniable. In 1977, he became the youngest player ever inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame at the tender age of 34.
And I left a long time before I wanted to leave. I wanted to play 10 years. I played 68 ball games, but I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, and I did my thing. I was made to play the game.
Gale Sayers, magic in motion. Teammates admired and respected him because he is always razor sharp physically. If you wish to see perfection, you had best get a hold of a film of Gale Sayers.
In 1994, Sayers was named to the NFL's 75th anniversary team, both as a running back and a kick returner, the only player to be named at 2 positions. Sadly, in his post-NFL life, Sayers battled dementia. His brother Roger said that it was tough to build all those memories all your life, and the next thing you know, you don't remember any of them. The grace and fluidity with which he ran will live on forever.
Here's part of Roger Goodell's statement from this morning. The NFL family lost a true friend today with the passing of Gale Sayers. Gale was one of the finest men in NFL history and one of the game's most exciting players. We send our heartfelt condolences to his wife, Artie, and their family. Our thoughts are with his teammates, the Bears organization, the many fans who remember him as a football player, and the many more people who were touched by Gale's spirit and generosity. Short season, 7 of them for the Bears, named first-team All-Pro in each of his first 5 seasons, one of only 4 players in NFL history to do that alongside Lawrence Taylor, Jim Brown, and Ollie Matson. He was a 2-time NFL rushing champion, but knee injuries, as we've said, cut his career short. Sayers inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame at 77 years old. The accolades in such a short career. No question a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Gale Sayers, also one of those players when he's the youngest ever to be inducted into the Hall of Fame and a rushing champion. But he was really one of those first pop culture running backs because of the movie Brian's Song. Of course, he and his teammate and fullback Brian Piccolo. One of those great sports movies that I think anybody who watch it, for me, it's like I'm not ashamed. It's a guy cry movie when you see the relationship between those two. But I think Gale Sayers is ever present with a lot of us because of that film.
The impact of only playing 68 games for your career, but still, despite it being the 60s, he still holds a couple of records to this day that have not been broken. The rookie touchdown record, most touchdowns in a game. Like, it's amazing to think the impact that he still continues to have. Rest in peace, Gale Sayers. That'll do it for your half-hour headlines.
But as you have seen now for the last couple of hours, today is about a little bit more than just this week's game. And when we heard the news this morning, honestly, this one just, it just hurt my heart. We're all mourning the loss of the great Gale Sayers today. Hall of Fame running back, philanthropist, and athletic director, and wildly successful businessman off the field after the game. In the simplest terms, one of the most electrifying, jaw-dropping, game-changing, transformative players we have ever seen. We lost Gale Sayers today, got the news this morning from the Pro Football Hall of Fame at the age of 77 years old. Here's the statement from Canton. All of those who love the game of football mourn the loss of one of the greatest to ever play this game, but the passing of Bears legend Gale Sayers. He was the very essence of a team player, quiet, unassuming, and always ready to compliment a teammate for a key block. Gale was an extraordinary man. This was from the Hall of Fame president, David Baker, who overcame a great deal of adversity during his NFL career and life. The entire Hall of Fame family mourns the passing. Our thoughts and prayers with his wife, Artie, the entire family, and forever keeping his legacy alive to serve as inspiration for future generations.
In 1965, the Bears drafted an explosive but bashful halfback named Gale Sayers.
Coming out of Kansas, coming to a big city like Chicago, I just didn't say a lot. You know, most of my answers to questions was one word, yes and no. And yes, I was very shy, but on the football field, I was not shy. I had the talent to see holes, to see openings, and had the quickness. When that opening was there, I was there.
Give me 18 inches of daylight. That's all I need.
Watching Gale was entertaining because you'd actually would see him make these moves, and it was scary at the same time. Gale was like a lightning bolt. He was frightening because he could score from anywhere on the field.
Playing against him was like walking through a field of mines. When it went off, you knew who it was. He could leap over you. He could reverse field on you. He could plant and hit a seam. He had it all. He was the first guy that had the entire package.
He did everything. He ran punts. He ran kickoffs. He was a constant threat. When you talk to other players, like other defensive guys, they all like shaking their head, and I'm like, I face this guy every day at practice. How much better did he make me as a player?
During a record-setting rookie season, Sayers recorded one of the NFL's finest single-game performances.
It was a muddy field. It was a muddy field for everybody but Gale Sayers. They were slipping and sliding. He was running, cutting, stopping, running. He had a return for a touchdown. I know he caught a pass for a touchdown, and I guess he ran for the other 4. It was the most awesome display of football that any individual put on, any in the history of the game, in my opinion. And you had to be there to see it.
As the saying goes, you ain't seen nothing yet. We're waiting for this San Francisco punt, none other than Gale Sayers, NFL Rookie of the Year. Dashing 85 dazzling yards on the longest punt return of the season. Here he is, galloping Gale, carrying the mail. This is his 6th touchdown of the game.
Gale was also featured in one of the great sports films of all time, documenting his friendship with teammate Brian Piccolo.
It's a classic. Even today, remember the performance.
Their relationship is a defining moment for a lot of people, I think. It was a wonderful love story.
Sayers' unique talent put him in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, despite playing just 7 injury-filled seasons.
Who knows what he would have done? Gale was the best.
I had a good career. Short career, but a good career. I enjoyed it. The things that I did on the football field speaks for themselves.
Watching him run, it was one of the most beautiful, special experiences I've ever had in my life. That's indelible greatness.
I think Gale Sayers was being a bit modest there. He didn't have a good career. He had a great career. Yes, a short career, but a great career. This is from Billy D. Williams, who played him, obviously, in the 1971 Classic. Please see it if you have not. Go watch it tonight. Brian's song. And we have a tweet as well from Jarrett Payton, who played running back himself in the National Football League. Here is his father, the great Walter Payton, with now the late, great Gale Sayers as well. The Bears are very lucky. Bears such a proud history here that they were able to pass the torch from Gale Sayers to Walter Payton. And this is a man who also carries that Bears legacy with him, the great Mike Singletary, Hall of Famer in his own right, joins us on NFL Now. Mike, thanks for joining us here, especially considering how hard this day must be for the entire Bears family. Can you put into words what he meant for that city and for that family?
Well, when you talk about someone like Gale Sayers, you go beyond the football part of it. Obviously, he was a fantastic football player, fantastic human being. But when I had a chance to get drafted and go to the Bears. I remember my first opportunity I had talking with him, and to be able to sit down and have someone talk to you that is an icon in Chicago and in the NFL, it was really heartwarming to me that he would take the time to sit down and talk to a rookie and just say, "Hey, this is the Chicago Bears, and we're family here, and we take care of one another. We play football. We take it to the next level. But if there's anything that I can ever do for you, I'm just a phone call away. Please call me." And I'll never forget that. We've had numerous conversations since then, but for a rookie, being able to talk to someone like GALE Sayers and have the opportunity to have that welcoming, it was very heartwarming and something that I'll never forget.
He always paid it forward, whether it was with Brian Piccolo's family, whether it was as a philanthropist in the community. People forget he went to Carbondale. He was the SIU AD for many years. But people hadn't seen him, Mike, in a lot of years. Obviously, his health was not great near the end. But you guys were all together last year on that stage for the 100-year anniversary when the team got together. And it was emotional for everyone to see him there. Tell me about that.
Well, I think anybody that had a chance to see GALE in the last couple of years, you know, you just talk to his wife, Artie, and she give you kind of the updates and how he was doing and whatever. But it was just, it was a tough situation. You see anyone that has achieved accomplishments as someone like GALE Sayers, and then to see him in that situation, we all want to see our guys, you know, live forever. We want to see them in the highest light. But I will always remember him as that rookie and that guy that came up to me and shared something with me that was very special, that allowed me to feel loved and feel warm. And I will always remember him that way.
When you first met him, you said he was so serious looking. Yet on the field, it was graceful. It was almost like you go back and read the stories from the 60s, like it was ballet, like he was playing a different game.
You know, when I look at GALE Sayers, it's like a poet. It's like he's writing a story and he's not quite sure what he's going to write. It just depends on who the audience is. But he's going to write his story, and when it's all said and done, you're going to know he told a great story.
Mike, what stood out as well to me, I think, and there are players, you are certainly one of them as well. I think back from that era, Jim Brown, and I admittedly am too young to have watched them, but when you see the tape, they could have played in any era. They could have played in year one. They could have played in this year, year 101, and they still would have been elite.
Well, I think when you talk about a guy like GALE Sayers, you know, you say a guy was before his time, but really it was just someone who had an opportunity, that had the ability and got out there and really looked at the football field as an opportunity to just display his talents and his gifts. And to see him run and to see him do the things that he did was absolutely amazing. The way he did it, with the grace that he did it, and the class that he did it.
77 years old, the great GALE Sayers. Mike Singletary, fellow Gold Jacket member of that Chicago Bears family. Thank you for taking the time, Mike, on a day like this. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, sir. Mike Singletary. This from the Bears on their Twitter feed. Hall of Famer Dick Butkus. By the way, they were drafted the same year. GALE Sayers, Dick Butkus. You want to talk about greatest draft ever? We will miss a great friend who helped me become the player I became, because after practicing and scrimmaging against GALE, I knew I could play against anybody. We lost one of the best Bears ever, and more importantly, we lost a great person. A football life, by the way, speaking of those two tonight, it's the Dick Butkus and Gale Sayers football life tonight. It's a shared life for the 60s there in Chicago. Tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on NFL Network. Again, Gale Sayers, may he rest in peace and power, 77 years old.
Matt Nagy just spoke about the passing of this legend.
I want to start off by giving my sincerest condolences to Gale Sayers' family. Obviously, it's a tough day. What an unbelievable human being, number one, player, number two, and it's just, it's a big loss for our family. And I was fortunate enough to be able to meet him for the first time last year at the 100-year celebration. Pretty special moment that I had. So thinking about his family.
I tell you what, Gale Sayers played some great football on the gridiron for 7 seasons with the Bears. He was named first-team All-Pro in each of his first 5 seasons. One of only 4 players in NFL history to do that alongside Lawrence Taylor, Jim Brown, and Ollie Matson. He was a 2-time NFL rushing champion, but knee injuries, if we discussed, it's cut his NFL career short. Inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame at 34 years old. That is the youngest ever, which goes to show you how dominant Gale Sayers was.
Our colleague Jay Harris trying to give a little perspective for the older folks and what Gale Sayers meant to them. And he's like, you know how sort of our generation, the young generation, when they're playing basketball with their friends, they would yell Kobe. Well, when they were playing like street football, for them, they would yell Gale Sayers, right, when they would try to do a move, because that's sort of what he was to them. He represented the culture in a way that no one had.
Beautiful sentiment, also a polite way to call Jay Harris old.
Fair.
Now a preview of Game 4, he's healthy.
Seasoned.
And it's a sad day in the NFL as we mourn the loss of Bears great Gale Sayers. Chris Berman joining us next to honor a legend. Hearts are heavy around the NFL today as we remember an all-time great, Gale Sayers. He's passed away at the age of 77. Here's Trey Wingo with more on the Hall of Famer.
In football, it's often said the best ability is available. That's why they call the greats those whose greatness has stood the test of time, who have longevity to their name. So what do you call those greats who don't have longevity? You call them Gale Sayers.
Give me 18 inches of daylight. That's all I need.
Gale Sayers only played 7 seasons in the NFL. In each of his last 2 seasons, he only played 2 games. But his Canton qualities were never in question.
None of the moves that I had on the football field, I worked on. Only thing I did was to get myself in shape. But once on the football field, I just let instinct take over. It was God-given talent.
Nicknamed the Kansas Comet after his alma mater and his speed, Sayers burst onto the scene his rookie year in the NFL, tying a league record with 6 touchdowns in a single game against the 49ers.
When I woke up that morning, it was raining. And when we got to the field, it was in bad condition, and it seemed like everybody was slipping but me. And every time I touched the football, I had good footing, and it was just one of those days that happens once in a lifetime.
Now, Sayers' career was derailed by major knee injuries, but his talent was undeniable. In 1977, he became the youngest player ever inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame at the tender age of 34.
And I left a long time before I wanted to leave. I wanted to play 10 years. I played 68 ball games, but I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, and I did my thing. I was made to play the game.
How best to describe what Sayers did on the field? Well, at his Hall of Fame induction ceremony, Bears founder and his coach, George Halas, called him the likes of which we will never see again.
Gale Sayers, magic in motion. Teammates admired and respected him because he was always razor sharp physically. If you wish to see perfection, you had best get a hold of a film of Gale Sayers.
In 1994, Sayers was named to the NFL's 75th anniversary team, both as a running back and a kick returner, the only player to be named at 2 positions. Sadly, in his post-NFL life, Sayers battled dementia. His brother Roger said that it was tough to build all those memories all your life, and the next thing you know, you don't remember any of them. Thankfully, though, the grace and fluidity with which he ran will live on forever.
And we welcome Boomer into the conversation here. And just a reminder to everybody, this studio that we're in right now is named after you and TJ. As you reflect on Gale Sayers and his life, and when you heard the news about his passing, you knew him personally. What can you tell us about who he was as a person?
As a person, he was better than he was a player. I know that's a cliche, Laura, but Gale had a smile every time you saw him at the Hall of Fame, and he went every year being the ultimate teammate of the Hall of Famers. You said, Gale, you look like you can still play. Yeah. No, I can't. Yes, you can. His friendship with Brian Piccolo, of course, which is well-founded movie, book, I Am Third, speaks for itself. He won the George Halas Comeback Player of the Year award in 1969 after the knee surgery. You gave it to Piccolo, like, no, I don't get that. You're battling cancer. So Gale is a person like that, and he always made you feel more important than him, and it's Gale Sayers. So that as a person, look, I can only imagine what it was to be his teammate, but I saw him at Canton, and I know what it was like. He was a leader of those guys. All the running backs, they flooded Jim Brown, they flooded Gale, all of the ones in the Hall of Fame. So
wow.
That was respect in addition to ability, no question.
Just watching you watch some of those highlights that we just saw, you can see how you react to them. What was he like as a player? How can you put that into perspective?
Well, no one had ever seen anybody like him when he came as a rookie in '65, NFL style. Look at the cuts. Barry Sanders, he was Barry before Barry Sanders. And there are no other players that I can think of that made you miss, that made the moves in the 100 years that we've had in the NFL. I thought about this driving over a little bit today, and it's fitting that the only other one, a little before my time, okay? Red Grange was a little before my time, because at the time he was, all this, and fittingly Chicago Bear like Gale. Gale was, well, the fact, and you heard Trey say it, the youngest player ever elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame still, well, that speaks for itself. Who knows what he would have amassed had he played 10, 12 years. He really only played 5. But it was, you smiled when you watch him. The Bears weren't any good, Laura. Let's remember, they won nothing. I mean, they didn't, not nothing. But you smiled when you got to watch him play. He's a highlight reel. So for you youngsters out there, I mean, who remember Barry Sanders, Barry would be the first to say, oh, no. Gale Sayers. We smile, but we're very sad. And it's Chicago, of course, the whole city mourning. But it's really all of football. Because Gale Sayers at 70 looked like he was 40 with his smile, with his attitude. And he played football that way in his 20s.
A true legend. Thank you so much for your perspective, Boomer. You're going to be with us later on in the show to talk a little bit about some current great players in the game. We'll be back with more NFL Live after this. Today, so many mourning the loss of Gale Sayers, the Hall of Famer, who had an incredible career and was an amazing man. He was drafted 4th overall by the Bears in 1965 after becoming a 2-time All-American at Kansas University. The Kansas Comet went on to earn first-team All-Pro honors in each of his first 5 seasons in the NFL. Only 3 other players in the history of the game have ever done that. At his Hall of Fame induction, George Halas said of Sayers, quote, "If you wish to see perfection as a running back, you had best get a hold of film of Gale Sayers. He was poetry in motion. His like will never be seen again."
A melancholy trails to Gale Sayers. The Hall of Fame running back of the Chicago Bears died at 77. Sayers was the football equivalent of Sandy Koufax. They had a short but meteoric career, the kind that left them legendary beyond their sheer numbers. Sayers played just 7 seasons because of knee injuries, retiring in 1971. But he was so great that he became the youngest player ever inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame at age 34. Sayers had 5 great seasons in which his reputation was built and solidified. In those seasons, he was 5 times All-Pro, averaged 5 yards per carry. Those 5 seasons produced most of his 4,956 yards and 56 total touchdowns. He was nearly impossible to bring down. He averaged more than 30 yards per kickoff return and 14.5 yards per punt return. He once scored 6 touchdowns in a game. Think of all the great elusive runners you have ever seen. They all owe a debt to Gale Sayers. His friendship with his teammate Brian Piccolo, who was dying of cancer, was the basis for the great movie Brian's Song. Wilbon, I met Gale Sayers a couple of times, but I know you felt very close to him.
Well, Tony, it grew that way. You see that picture there because of you, and I owe you a debt of gratitude I can never repay. Because in one of those golf tournaments, I remember you said to Gale Sayers said to you, I think, Wilbon says, I'm his hero. I don't believe that for a second. And then because of you guys playing, I got the photo, which is in my house, the most valued piece of memorabilia I have, that has Sayers and Butkus on it right after they were drafted, and it's autographed to me. They each signed it to me because of Mrs. Sayers, and I am grateful for that. I got to know him late. He was the last of my sporting heroes I ever got to meet. Tony, he scored 6 touchdowns against the 49ers, and then he got hurt against the 49ers. Kermit Alexander put a helmet on his knee, and George Halas, the founder, owner, then coach, wept openly with Gale Sayers. That's how much Sayers meant to him. And Sayers and Butkus meant everything to me as a kid. Everything I learned about football, it was because of them. And I used to butt dial Dick Butkus inadvertently, and I was terrified because he's the most intimidating man ever. And I reached Butkus one day, and he said, say something, ask me something crazy. And I started to talk to him, and I told him that he and Sayers were my heroes. And he said to me, Sayers is much more worthy of being your hero than I am. I'm not sure that was true, but they were some tag team, and it's been a difficult day for me and a lot of people in Chicago who loved Gale Sayers.
Gale Sayers was the platonic form of running back. Everybody who's run before and since wishes they ran like that.
It was Barry Sanders before Barry Sanders, a man who once said, just give me 18 inches of daylight. In an era of 3 yards and a cloud of dust, Gale Sayers was a lightning bolt of quickness. The man known as the Kansas Comet died today at the age of 77. Sayers' health in the last year had been declining as he battled dementia. This Bears star running back and kick returner had his career cut short due to major knee injuries, which limited him to just 68 games. Sayers was a 5-time All-Pro who averaged 5 yards per carry for his career and was a first-ballot Hall of Famer. PTI's Michael Wilbon, a Chicago native, has much more on one of the greatest running backs of all time.
There's nobody like him. There's not been anybody like him, which is why if you talk to people of a certain age who are old enough to have seen Gale Sayers, they'll tell you, they'll say, I don't care how many games he played, you have to see him. He occupies a place, alongside Ernie Banks and Ditka, and there are a handful of great athletes in Chicago that, we just have been clinging to all our lives. I used to feel sorry for myself as a little kid because Gale got hurt so soon, and I was still so young, and I thought, I'll never, that's a once-in-a-lifetime deal.
Sayers earned a 1965 AP NFL Rookie of the Year honors with one of the most impressive seasons by any rookie in NFL history. He's one of 4 players in NFL history to make first-team All-Pro in each of their first 5 seasons. He was a 2-time rushing champ while leading the league in yards per game in 3 different seasons. Sayers was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1977 at the age of 34, making him the youngest player enshrined. Rest in peace, the Kansas Comet.
Gale Sayers has died at the age of 77. The former Chicago Bears running back played 7 seasons in the NFL before he suffered a career-ending knee injury. Sayers is considered one of the greatest running backs of all time. He was drafted number 4 overall before winning Rookie of the Year and 5 All-Pro honors. Sayers was also known for his friendship with teammate Brian Piccolo, who died of cancer at the age of 26. Their friendship inspired the movie Brian's Song. It's unclear just what caused Sayers' death, but he was suffering from dementia.
Let me just say, Anne-Marie, that Gale Sayers was truly one of the great running backs of the National Football League. He only played, as you said, for 7 seasons, but if you go back and you watch the video of him running down the field, dodging defenders, it was a sight to behold. He really was poetry in motion. It's just, I saw the news this morning and I was just absolutely heartbroken because as kids, you know, we came to know him not only for his exploits on the field, but as you said, and that friendship that he had with Brian Piccolo, and that movie, which actually starred Billy D. Williams and James Caan, who played Brian Piccolo, was sort of a totem of our childhood. And it's just a sad day to see Gale Sayers. 2020 cannot be over enough for me, man. I'm telling you.
I get.
Otis Livingston joins us now. You know, the word great is overused, but not this time, O.
No, it definitely applies. There are just a few players who belong on the Mount Rushmore of running backs. Even though he had a short NFL career, Gale Sayers is one of them. One of the most electrifying players ever to step on a football field. The Kansas Comet left quite a trail off it.
Here he is, galloping Gale, carrying the mail. This is his 6th touchdown of the game.
Coming out of the University of Kansas, Gale Sayers burst onto the NFL scene with a 6-touchdown game in his rookie year. For 5 seasons, he was one of the most explosive running backs the NFL has ever seen. He famously said,
"Give me 18 inches of daylight. That's all I need."
A threat to go the distance every time he touched the ball, with a running style described as a jazz musician playing football. Unfortunately, Sayers played only 7 seasons, the final 2 ravaged by injuries. He even said, "I had a good career, a short career, but a good career. The things I did on the football field speak for themselves." But it's also what he did off the field that speaks for the type of man he was. Immortalized in the 1971 film Brian's Song, it shows his close friendship with a white teammate, Brian Piccolo, who would die of cancer at the age of 26. When the Bears ended their policy of segregating players by race in hotel room assignments, the 2 running backs roomed together and developed a powerful bond. Sayers was by Piccolo's side throughout his fight with the deadly disease.
I love Brian Piccolo. And I'd like all of you to love him, too.
Billy D. Williams, who played Sayers in the film, tweeted this today: "My heart is broken over the loss of my dear friend Gale Sayers. Portraying Gale in Brian's Song was a true honor and one of the highlights of my career. He was an extraordinary human being with the kindest heart. My sincerest condolences to his family. R.I.P. Gale Sayers." NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell released a statement saying, in part, the NFL family lost a true friend today with the passing of Gale Sayers. Gale was one of the finest men in NFL history and one of the game's most exciting players. Gale Sayers, Hall of Famer, and the youngest player ever to be enshrined in Canton, was 77 years old. And that enshrinement shows just how great Gale Sayers was on the football field. Usually you have to wait at least 5 years to get elected to the Hall of Fame, and that's after a long career. He only really played 5 NFL seasons and was a first ballot Hall of Famer. And as you saw, he was first ballot off the field as well. Christina Maurice.
That's all you heard about him, Otis.
That's
Just
right.
Great man.
Thank you, Otis. Kansas Jayhawk. The Hall of Fame running back has passed away at the age of 77. Danny Welniak is in the locker room now with a closer look at his life. Danny.
Ellen, nicknamed the Kansas Comet for his running style and dominance during his career as a Jayhawk, Gale Sayers not only impacted the KU football program, but really anyone who loves the sport of football. Gale Sayers was one of the most impactful players the sport of football has ever seen.
Give me 18 inches of daylight. That's all I need.
Although born in Wichita, Kansas, Sayers grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. He chose to come back to his home state to play college ball for the Jayhawks. In his 3 seasons with KU, he rushed for 2,675 yards, posted 11 100-yard rushing games, tallied 3,917 all-purpose yards, and was dubbed an All-American twice. His number 48 is one of just 3 numbers to be retired by the KU football program.
540, he's all the way. When you talk about 1965 NFL rookies, here's a man you can't forget.
He certainly made his mark in the NFL in his rookie season, but only after he had to make the decision between 2 teams who had drafted him, the Chiefs of the AFL and the Bears of the NFL. Ultimately, he chose Chicago and became a first-ballot Hall of Famer at the age of 34. The Kansas Comet's legacy lives on as one of the most exciting players to ever play the game. Well, KU's athletic director Jeff Long told reporters today that a statue of Sayers will be unveiled at halftime of the KU-OSU game on October 3rd. Sayers did get a chance to see pictures of the statue and was part of the sculpting process. I'm Danny Welniak, KCTV5 Sports.
In Wichita, Kansas, but raised in Omaha, Nebraska, Gale Eugene Sayers was one of 3 sons raised by Roger Winfield Sayers and Bernice Ross. He attended the University of Kansas, and with 4,000 all-purpose yards, was named the Kansas Comet. But football was not a means to an end.
I went to college not as an athletic student, but a student athlete.
He was selected by the Chicago Bears as the 4th overall pick in the 1965 draft by owner, GM, and head coach Papa Bear.
And I want to give a special thanks to George Halas. A man who more than anyone else has made professional football what it is today. There's not much you can say about someone who's become a legend in his own lifetime, but I want to try. Mr. Halas is one of those rare individuals who is not content with things as they are, but sees things as they could be and works to make things better.
As a rookie, he exploded with an NFL record 22 touchdowns, capped off in December on a muddy Wrigley Field with 6 touchdowns. As great as he was on the field, his quiet wisdom and integrity made him the perfect choice for George Halas. Halas chose GALE to become the first African American ever in the NFL history to room with a white player in 1967, Brian Piccolo. They were completely opposites who found themselves to be best friends through football. A true story that captured America's ideal of coming together in Brian's song. They became great friends, and it was GALE at Brian's bedside when he tragically passed away before the season started. A sober part of life's journey.
Reaching this point, however, is not as important as striving to get here. This is true in all professions, in all life's activities. There are doctors, lawyers, school teachers, plumbers, all who strive to do the very best to their abilities. We hear a lot today about how the American people have lost their dedication to excellence. I don't believe that is true. Each of us excels at different things, sometimes in areas that are only a hobby, more often in our life's vocation. The most important thing, however, is to strive to do our very best.
GALE Sayers, Hall of Famer forever.
God gave me a gift to go out there and to run with football. And that's what I did.
GALE Sayers, without a doubt, the finest halfback that ever played, together with George McAfee and Red Grange.
Give me 18 inches of daylight. That's all I need.
This is GALE Sayers. You can see the balance in the move here as Sayers dives into the end zone for a touchdown. That's GALE Sayers on the 15-yard line. You can see him breaking away from that tackler. And watch the moves here. The quick move of GALE Sayers. He's off 85 yards for a touchdown, looking over his shoulder. His 6th touchdown of the game. He has just broken the National Football League touchdown record for 1 year.
That move of his, and he was gone. You never got a good shot at him. Christ, it ought to be a cakewalk against anybody else. And you know something? It turned out to be the truth.
As Bear fans everywhere know, when we watch GALE Sayers run, we were watching a master magician at work. GALE, thank you for 7 glorious seasons and fabulous memories. Tonight, on behalf of Bear fans everywhere, it is my privilege to retire Bear jersey number 40 forever.
It was a great honor to play in the National Football League. But I consider myself very, very lucky to play here in Chicago for you, the great Chicago Bear football fan.
hopefully people that admired me, that they would see I played as hard as I could.
This morning, we remember the life of the legendary running back GALE Sayers, who ran in a way as unique as the mark he left on football. From the moment the Bears picked him 4th overall in the 1965 NFL Draft, Sayers did things no other player could and still hasn't. Sayers remains the last player to score an NFL record 6 touchdowns in a game, which he did on a mud-slop field against San Francisco on December 12th, 1965, which happens to be the day my parents were married, in a game that some still believe is the single finest performance any football player ever has had. Away from the field, Sayers wrote a book about his friendship with teammate Brian Piccolo that was turned into the Emmy award-winning television movie Brian's Song. And after multiple knee injuries ended an abbreviated but illustrious NFL career, Sayers became the youngest player ever inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, reaching Canton at the age of 35. Now, after succumbing to complications of dementia and Alzheimer's disease, Sayers leaves us at the age of 77.
I just want to talk about one of your Pro Football Hall of Fame colleagues for a moment. He was the Kansas Comet who took the Windy City and the NFL by storm. Indeed, GALE Sayers needed only 7 professional seasons to prove his Hall of Fame worthiness, especially when you consider he was only fully healthy for just 4 of those. And boy, before injuries cut his career way too short, Sayers sure packed in a lifetime of excitement and greatness in those 4 years. Rookie of the Year, 2-time rushing champ, running, receiving, returning, taking your breath away with each touch. For those of the current fantasy football generation needing a frame of reference, imagine what would happen today if a rookie scored 6 touchdowns in a game, as Sayers did in 1965. And as fans of the great movie Brian's Song can attest, Sayers' grace on the field was matched only by that of his off of it. All of us here at NFL Network want to send our condolences to the Sayers and Bears family. GALE Sayers was 77 years old.
Folks, we at the NFL Today would like to take the time to honor a football legend who passed earlier this week after his battle with dementia. 18 inches of daylight is all it took for the Kansas Comet, otherwise known as GALE Sayers, to become one of the most electric players in NFL history after being drafted by the Bears in 1965. Despite Boomer only playing 7 years, Sayers finished his career with 5 first-team All-Pro selections, leading him, Phil, to become the youngest inductee into the Pro Football Hall of Fame at age 34. Now, through his career, it was cut short due to injury. He's remembered as one of the greatest players in history, and his legacy is just as dynamic as he was.